This is Alienated Youth presents the A to Z of Super Nintendo games. Back at the end of the 1980s, Nintendo were at the top of their game. The Famicom had become a synonym for video games in Japan. The NES was in approximately 30% of American homes, and had nearly single-handedly resurrected the video game industry in North America after the crash in 1983. And Company Golden Goose Mario was more widely recognised by American children than Mickey Mouse was. Because of all this, Nintendo were very hesitant to think about a follow-up. Let's put it this way, it was less that they were the market leaders, and they were more the market. They had the consoles and the games flying off the shelves, so there was no incentive for them to think about disrupting that with new hardware. But the old adage is, competition breeds innovation, and by God, was Nintendo about to get some competition. In 1987, NEC and Hudson Soft partnered up to release the PC Engine, also known as the TurboGrafx 16. It was 8-bit like the NES, but it had a beefier graphics capability, and it would start taking a formidable chunk out of the Famicom's market share in Japan. A year later, Sega released the Mega Drive, also known as the Genesis in North America. A true next-gen console at the time, with a 16-bit processor. It did quite modestly in Japan, but it was a serious contender in the West. At this point, Nintendo conceded that they needed something new to maintain their position. Nintendo President Hiroshi Yamauchi would reveal the development of the Super Famicom in a newspaper interview in September 1987. It would later be demonstrated to the Japanese press in late 1988 and in summer 1989. And games would be announced such as Super Mario Bros. 4 and Dragon Quest V as being in development for this new console. The Super Famicom was released November 21st, 1990 in Japan, with Super Mario World and FZero being its launch titles. A 16-bit console, it incorporated graphics and sounds co-processors that performed simulated 3D effects and tiling, a palette of 32,768 colours, with 256 colours on screen at any one time, and 8-channel ADPCM sound. These specs can be extended on a game-by-game basis by using various expansion chip upgrades, giving a flexibility the NES could only dream of. Nintendo would go on to release the rechristened Super Nintendo Entertainment System in North America on the 25th of August 1991, and in Europe starting with the UK and Ireland on April 11th, 1992. Although Sega and the Mega Drive would give it a run for its money in its early life, the SNES would end up as the best-selling machine of the 16-bit era, shifting just shy of 50 million units. With a large number of classic games, some of which are considered to be the best of all time, it is widely considered one of the very best video game consoles ever designed.
Now you're playing with power, superpower.
So what exactly is this video? Well, it is what it says in the title. It's an A to Z list of Super Nintendo games. 26 individual Super Nintendo games covering each letter of the alphabet. Now, I originally posted these as a series of 1-minute videos over on my TikTok, and this just collects all of those posts in one convenient video. Now, this is not a definitive list, nor is it a list of the 26 best video games ever. You could argue that some of the games are, but generally I went to try and give a good representation of the different kinds of games that were available on the Super Nintendo. The only rule I had with this list was that it was one game per letter, and it was the game's English title had to start with that letter for it to be valid on this list. So with all that said, let's begin the A to Z of Super Nintendo games. A is for Axelay. Axelay was released by Konami in 1992. Several members of the team that worked on this game would go on to form Treasure later that year. Its mixture of top-down and side-scrolling levels put it in the same vein as Konami's own Salamander from 1986. Clever use of parallax scrolling gave the game its unique look, with a brilliant soundtrack scoring the tight shoot-'em-up gameplay. Axelay is also known for its screen-filling boss fights that punctuate every level. A is for Battletoads and Battlemaniacs. Battletoads and Battlemaniacs was released by Rare in 1993. The game follows Rash and Pimple as they try to rescue their friends from the gamescape. The game plays like the previous entries in the series, with beat 'em up and action sections aplenty. The game remixes and enhances levels from the original Battletoads game. It even includes an updated version of the infamous speeder bike level. C is for Chrono Trigger. Chrono Trigger was released by Square in 1995. It's considered one of the best RPGs on the SNES, and it was followed up by Chrono Cross in 1999. Developed by Final Fantasy creator Hironobu Sakaguchi, Dragon Quest creator Yuki Horii, and Dragon Ball artist Akira Toriyama, this RPG sees you travelling through time to save the world from a calamity. The game was widely praised for its battle system and its writing, and it's considered one of Square's best ever works. D is for Donkey Kong Country. Donkey Kong Country was released by Rare in 1994. A reboot of the Donkey Kong series, the game sees you play as Donkey and his nephew Diddy as they recover their banana stash from King K. Rool. Donkey Kong Country saw Rare use the silicon graphics technology that Nintendo was using for the Nintendo 64 to create pre-rendered graphics that helped the game stand out against its 32-bit competition. Donkey Kong Country was unique, as it was the first game in the series Nintendo, and specifically designer Shigeru Miyamoto, didn't have a major role in creating. It led to Nintendo being more open to collaboration with their IPs. Rare made 2 further sequels on the SNES, Diddy Kong's Quest and Dixie Kong's Double Trouble. E is for Earthbound. Earthbound was developed by Ape Inc. and HAL Laboratory and was released in 1994. Part of the Mother RPG series, the game sees Ness and his friends travel the world collecting melodies from 8 sanctuaries to defeat the evil Gygus. Written and directed by Shigesato Itoi and programmed by late Nintendo president Satoru Iwata, the game subverted the usual RPG tropes by being set in a real-world environment and using irreverent humour to move its story. Earthbound initially saw little success in the West, performing under target in the US but eventually finding a cult following. Only released on the SNES in the US and Japan, it didn't see a wider release until it was brought to the Wii U's Virtual Console in 2013. F is for FZero. FZero was released by Nintendo in 1990. A launch title in all major regions for the SNES, FZero is a futuristic, fast-paced racing game where you compete in tracks high in the sky of various alien worlds. The game was used as a technical showcase for the Super Nintendo's Mode 7 technology. The graphical rotation used, along with the speed of the gameplay, was unlike anything seen in home gaming at the time. FZero was well received at launch, and it saw new entries in the series on the N64, GameCube and the Game Boy Advance. A new entry doesn't seem forthcoming, but the series is still well regarded by Nintendo fans to this day. G is for Goof Troop. Goof Troop was released by Capcom in 1993. Based on the Disney cartoon of the same name, you take on the role of Goofy or his son Max in order to save Pete and PJ from pirates on Spoonerville Island. A puzzle adventure game, this was a different style game compared to the typical Disney cartoon games from the NES era. Goofy and Max can't attack enemies directly, resorting to throwing barrels and bombs, kicking blocks, and luring enemies into traps to progress, along with solving various environmental puzzles. Goof Troop was one of the first games designed by Shinji Mikami, who'd go on to help create Resident Evil and Dino Crisis. H is for Harvest Moon. Harvest Moon was released in 1996, published by Natsume in America and by Nintendo in Europe. A farming life simulator, you find yourself tasked with restoring and maintaining the farm that you've inherited from your granddad. In between clearing land, planting crops, and raising livestock, you meet the locals and build relationships while also foraging for supplies. This was the first game in the series now known as Story of Seasons, and it has inspired other life simulator games such as 2016's Stardew Valley. I is for International Superstar Soccer.
International Superstar Soccer!
International Superstar Soccer was released by Konami in 1995, developed by the Osaka branch. ISS was praised for taking a much more realistic looking approach to its contemporaries such as FIFA and Sensible Soccer. Distinct individual players combined with fluid controls make it a joy to play, and it's still considered one of the best 16-bit sport titles. International Superstar Soccer was followed up later in 1995 with a deluxe version with an expanded roster and refinements to gameplay. The ISS series was eventually eclipsed by its sister series, the Pro Evolution Soccer series, which was developed by Konami's Tokyo studio. J is for Joe and Mack, Cavemen Ninja. Joe and Mack, Caveman Ninja was released by Data East in 1991. The SNES game was a reworked port of the arcade game released the same year. An action platformer, you take control of Joe and Mack as they traverse a prehistoric land to rescue their girlfriends. Different weapons can be attached to the cavemen's clubs, such as dino bones and stone wheels, to aid in fighting the screen-filling dinosaur bosses. Joe and Mack had one sequel in 1994 and a spin-off with a new protagonist, Congo's Caper, which came out in 1993. K is for Kirby's Dream Course. Kirby's Dream Course is a mini-golf game by HAL Laboratory and Nintendo, released in 1994. Kirby's Dream Course sees Kirby as the ball as you play mini-golf from an isometric viewpoint. Each hole has various enemies and hazards to clear. The last enemy on screen becomes the hole in order to complete the level. Originally designed as a standalone game called Special T-Shot, HAL Laboratory refactored the game with Kirby characters and power-ups after the success of the Kirby's Dream Land series on the Game Boy. L is for Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past was released by Nintendo in 1991. It is the third entry in Nintendo's vaunted Legend of Zelda series. Once again, Link is thrust into a quest to save Hyrule. The Dark Wizard Ganon has usurped the throne and kidnapped the descendants of the Seven Sages, looking to break the seal to the Sacred Realm and to release Ganon from his imprisonment. A Link to the Past introduced themes and mechanics that would become series staples. The inclusion of a second map to explore, the Dark World, created an epic quest that struggled to fit in one of the biggest ROM carts of the time. It is still considered one of the best games of the series, and it also received a direct sequel, A Link Between Worlds, on the 3DS in 2013. M is for Mega Man X. Mega Man X was released by Capcom in 1994, the first entry in the X spin-off series of Mega Man games. Playing as X, you're tasked with taking on rogue robots called Mavericks, led by former ally Sigma, who are looking to end humanity and take over the world. Like in previous Mega Man games, X can earn weaponry from downed Mavericks in order to battle his way to Sigma. Mega Man X was Capcom's attempt to reinvent Mega Man for a new generation. It kept the usual formula of choosing your own level order and earning special weapons, but it added features like dashing and wall climbing. The game was originally going to star Zero, but it was felt that it would be too much of a departure. Zero would be playable by Mega Man X3, and he even got his own spin-off series on the Game Boy Advance. N is for NBA Jam. NBA Jam was originally developed by Midway Games and released by Acclaim Entertainment in 1994. It was the first entry in the NBA Jam series. NBA Jam had been one of the first real playable basketball games and one of the first to feature NBA licensed teams and players. The exaggerated gameplay with superhuman dunks and no fouls, allowing a very free-flowing game, was extremely popular and ensured it would see a home release developed by Iguana Entertainment. While the game featured most NBA players of the time, Michael Jordan of the Chicago Bulls and Shaquille O'Neal of Orlando Magic at the time owned their own name and likeness rights, and a deal to include them in the game fell through. The game was also infamously biased against the Bulls, with the developer confirming the game was programmed so the Bulls would miss last-second shots against the Detroit Pistons in close games. O is for Ogre Battle. Ogre Battle, The March of the Black Queen was released by Quest in Japan in 1993. It was localised and published by Enix in North America in 1995. A real-time tactical RPG, Ogre Battle sees you take charge of a band of rebels leading a revolution against an evil empire. Mixing the real-time unit movements of a real-time strategy game and the skirmishes and character progression of a traditional RPG, you work toward freeing the world from a tyrannical empress. Series creator Yasumi Matsuno took inspiration from the Yugoslav wars to inform the story's dark political narrative, to bring a sense of realism of war to the game. He was also inspired by Queen's second album, with the game taking its title from the tracks Ogre Battle and The March of the Black Queen. P is for Plock. Plock was a platform game developed by Software Creations in 1993. It was created as a concept by the Pickford brothers Steve and John. Comparable to other mascot platformers of the time, Plock sees you take the role of the titular character as he protects his island Acrylic from the flea forces of the Flea Queen. He does this by launching his limbs as projectiles, both to hurt enemies and to activate targets. Plock's origins came from when the Pickfords were working for Zippo Games. They had pitched a coin-op game utilising Rare's Razboard hardware under the name Flea Pit. The project got cancelled when Zippo Games closed, but when the Pickfords earned their places at Software Creations, they revived the project as a SNES game. The Pickfords kept the IP for the game rather than the publishers, mainly as they envisioned making a franchise out of the character. Q is for Qbit 3. Qbit 3 was a puzzle game developed by Real Time Associates and published by NTVIC in 1992. Playing similar to the original arcade game, you control Qbit as you try to change the colour of each cube on the level map by jumping on each spot while avoiding enemies and other dangers. Qbit 3 plays similarly to the Game Boy version, in that as well as the regular pyramid map, there are other bigger maps of other shapes to navigate. Interesting side note, of the 1,756 officially licensed games released on the SNES, only Qbit 3 has an English title beginning with the letter Q. R is for R-Type 3, The Third Lightning. R-Type 3, The Third Lightning is a side-scrolling shoot-'em-up developed by Tamtex and published by Irem in 1993, as well as Jellicoe in North America in 1994. Continuing the fight against the Baido Empire, R-Type 3 sees you pilot the R-90 fighter as you confront the alien threat head-on. Continuing the same gameplay from earlier entries in the series, the power of the SNES brings a fast-paced challenge to even the most battle-hardened gamer. R-Type 3 was the first in the series to provide different loadouts to the series' iconic Force weapon, bringing a bit of strategy to your playstyle. An alternative version of the R90's charging wave cannon is provided as well, giving a powerful temporary boost to your firepower at the cost of a cooldown period. S is for Super Mario World. Super Mario World was an SNES launch title developed and published by Nintendo in late 1990. Essentially Super Mario Bros. 4, Super Mario World sees the titular plumber have to rescue Princess Toadstool after she was kidnapped, again, by Bowser while the gang were vacationing on Dinosaur Island. Mario is aided in his adventure with the new Super Cape power-up allowing flight through the levels, as well as Dino companion Yoshi making his debut appearance. Shigeru Miyamoto designed Super Mario World as a showcase of the then new SNES's capabilities. During development, the software tools weren't fully developed, and the team, according to director Takashi Tezuka, had to go along with starting something new. Miyamoto had envisioned Yoshi as far back as the original Super Mario Bros. On the NES, but was unable to implement the Dino ride at the time due to hardware limitations. T is for Tetris Attack. Tetris Attack, known as Panel de Pon in Japan, was a puzzle game developed by Intelligent Systems and released by Nintendo in 1995. Despite the name, it bears no links to the original Soviet game. A panel-switching match 3 puzzler produced by Game Boy inventor Gunpei Yokoi, the game featured fairies as the main characters and had a mythical fantasy setting. This was changed in the international release, with the title being changed and the game using characters and settings from Yoshi's Island. Despite the name, Tetris Attack was not connected to the Tetris franchise. Tetris Company co-founder Henk Rogers said in a 2009 interview that despite him liking the game, he regretted giving Nintendo the license to the name, saying the game got lost in history due to using the Tetris branding. Future games in the series would use the Puzzle League name. U is for Unirally, or if you're in America, Uniracers. Unirally, also known as Uniracers in NTSC territories, was developed by DMA Design and published by Nintendo in 1994. An interesting take on the racing genre, Unirally involves racing riderless unicycles over a series of 2D tracks. A heavy focus is on performing tricks and stunts in order to accumulate momentum in order to beat your rivals. Competition types include doing laps of a circuit, sprint races, or earning points in a stunt competition. Shortly after Unirally's release, Pixar sued DMA Design for allegedly copying the unicycle character and concept from the short film Red Stream. Pixar won, and as a result Nintendo had to stop producing cartridges. As a result, the game only sold approximately 300,000 copies. V is for Virtual Bart.
Virtual Bart!
Virtual Bart is an action game based on The Simpsons, created by Sculpture Software and published by Acclaim Entertainment in 1994. A surrealist action game, Virtual Bart sees you play as Alberto as he gets trapped in a virtual reality display at Springfield Elementary's Science Fair. Bart's only chance to escape is to complete the 6 programs in the display, each represented by a different theme and playstyle. While far from being the worst game based on the world's most famous yellow family, see The Simpsons Wrestling for that, Virtual Bart reviewed mediocre at release, with criticism mostly levelled at its controls and repetitive gameplay. That being said, the game is indicative of the licensed games common at the time, and is far from the worst example of this type of game. W is for Wolfenstein 3D. Wolfenstein 3D is a first-person shooter developed by id Software and published by Imagineer in 1994. The third game in the Wolfenstein series, although the only one created by id, Wolfenstein 3D sees you in the shoes of William B.J. Blazkowicz during World War II as he escapes Castle Wolfenstein and carries out missions to hinder the Nazi plans. Although faithful to the DOS original, Nintendo insisted on censoring the SNES port, removing blood and changing Nazi imagery. The original game used an at the time revolutionary raycasting engine coded by John Cormack that allowed for a fast and fluid 3D experience. This had to be altered to run well on the SNES hardware, with the raycasting system replaced by a faster binary space partitioning system. X is for XMen, Mutant Apocalypse. X-Men Mutant Apocalypse is an action game developed and published by Capcom in 1994. A side-scrolling brawler, you take control of 5 of Marvel's mutants, Cyclops, Beast, Gambit, Psylocke and Wolverine, as they attempt to sabotage activities on Genosha and liberate the captive mutants there. Each of the X-Men have their own powers and skills to utilise on their own levels, and you'll need to utilise everyone as you work your way to the final confrontation with Magneto. X-Men Mutant Apocalypse was the second X-Men game developed by Capcom, after Children of the Atom, released the same year. This was the beginning of a lucrative partnership between Marvel and the Street Fighter creators, leading to the Marvel vs Capcom series. Y is for Yoshi's Island, Super Mario World 2. Yoshi's Island, Super Mario World 2 is a platform game produced by Nintendo in 1995. It serves as the first game in the Yoshi series, and also as a prequel to the Super Mario series. Following an attack by Kamek that sees baby Mario separated from his sibling Luigi, Yoshi's Island sees the dinosaur clan transporting the young plumber to try and rescue his brother, while trying to thwart the Magic Koopa's plans. Eschewing normal health mechanics, a hit to Yoshi sees baby Mario float away with a countdown beginning, and if this hits 0, Mario is whisked away into Kamek's clutches. Yoshi's Island was given a hand-drawn aesthetic which producer Shigeru Miyamoto seen as an antithesis to the pre-rendered visuals favoured by other games after the release of Donkey Kong Country. It utilised the Super FX2 chip to pull off some fantastic scrolling and rotational effects, most notably seen in the boss fights. And last but not least, Z is for Zombies Ate My Neighbours. Zombies Ate My Neighbours, known as just Zombies in Europe and Australia, is a top-down run-and-gun game developed by LucasArts and published by Konami in 1993. Playing as Zeke or Julie, Zombies sees a zombie apocalypse land in your neighbourhood. Armed with an assortment of weapons, you have to save your neighbours from the undead horde, made up of a who's who of Hammer horrors as you take on zombies, werewolves, aliens and vampires. Infused with LucasArts' trademark humour, Zombies Ate My Neighbours wasn't a massive commercial success. However, it did become a cult classic with the graphics, humour and deep gameplay praised. It also led to a sequel in 1994 called Ghoul Patrol. So that was the A to Z of Super Nintendo games. What was your favourite? Did you agree with what I put on the list? What was your suggestion for the letter S? There was only like 200 different options. Why don't you put your answers in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe. You can find me on Twitter at MarkDRMcQueen, and these videos, along with various other bits of gaming content, can be found on TikTok. I'm under Alienated Youth. Until next time, goodbye.